How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Greetings, conversationalists. It's Eric Erickson. We've got breaking news out of the gate here on the program. The Supreme Court has just ruled 6-3. The Trump administration may continue its ICE raids in Los Angeles. There's been a lawsuit filed out there that was ordered ICE to pause raids. And the Supreme Court has just said 6-3 that while the case is pending appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the ICE agents can continue to do their raids. This should not surprise anyone, and yet the left is melting down. There is a dissent, of course, from the three progressives on the court. Notwithstanding that, Justice Kavanaugh wrote a concurrence. I vote to grant the government's application for the interim stay pending appeal. Immigration and Nationality Act authorizes immigration agents to interrogate any alien or person believed to be an alien as to his right to be or in the United States. Immigration officers may briefly detain an individual for questioning. They have a reasonable suspicion based on specific articulable facts that the person being questioned is an alien illegally in the United States. The government estimates there are at least 15 million people in the United States illegally, many millions illegally entered or illegally overstayed just in the past few years. Illegal immigration is especially pronounced in Los Angeles, according to among other locales in the United States. About 10% of the people in L.A. are illegally in the United States, meaning about 2 million illegal immigrants in Los Angeles. Not surprisingly, given those extraordinary numbers, U.S. immigration officers have prioritized immigration enforcement in the L.A. area. The government sometimes makes brief investigative stops to check the immigration status of those who gather in locations where people are hired for day jobs, who work or appear to work in jobs such as construction, landscaping, agriculture, or car washes that often do not require paperwork and are therefore attractive to illegal immigrants. Immigration stops based on reasonable suspicion of illegal presence have been an important component of immigration enforcement for decades. In this case, the district court enjoined U.S. immigration officers from making investigative stops in the L.A. area when the stops are based on the following factors or combination of factors: presence at particular locations such as bus stops, car washes, day labor pickup sites, agriculture sites, and the like, the type of work one does, speaking Spanish or speaking English with an accent, and apparent race or ethnicity. The government contends that the injunction will substantially hamper efforts to enforce immigration. To obtain a stay from this court, the moving party must demonstrate a fair prospect that if the district court's decision were affirmed, this court should grant cert and reverse. The moving party must also show a likelihood it would suffer irreparable harm if the stay was not granted. In my view, the government has made a sufficient showing to obtain stay pending appeal. Now, I want to go down to the bottom of Kavanaugh's decision here. And again, I was a lawyer, did constitutional law. I'm speeding through this because it literally hit as I was coming on air. So I'm digesting it with you, but I know how to read these cases. So let me get to this. The balance of harms and equities favor the government here, especially in an immigration case like this one. It is also important to stress the proper role of the judiciary. The judiciary does not set immigration policy or decide in enforcement priorities. It should come as no surprise that some administrations may be more laissez-faire in enforcement and other administrations more strict. Article 3 judges may have views on which policy approach is better or fairer, but judges are not appointed to make the policy calls. In sum, the government has demonstrated a fair prospect of success on the merits and has met the other factors for an interim stay. I therefore support the application. And he adds, consistency and neutrality are hallmarks of good judging, and in my view, we abide by those enduring judicial values, in this case, by granting the stay. In other words, what Kavanaugh is saying in his concurrence is he doesn't believe the local judges are acting in good faith. That now he's using legalese to say it, but how do I know that Justice Kavanaugh is suggesting the judges are not operating in good faith? Well, I read it to you. You might have sailed past it with me. He didn't use a lot of legalese in it. So let's go back to where they are. He said the government estimates 15 million illegals, 2 million in LA. The government sometimes makes brief investigative stops to check the immigration status of those who gather in locations where people are hired for day jobs, who work or appear to work in jobs such as construction, landscaping, agriculture, and car washes that often do not require paperwork and are therefore attractive to illegal immigrants, and those who do not speak much, if any, English. If the officers learn the individuals they stopped is an American citizen or otherwise lawful, they promptly let the individual go. If the individual is illegally in the United States, the officers may arrest the individual and initiate the process of removal. That's what the government does. They go to places where there's a lot of day laborers, where there's not a lot of paperwork, and they inquire reasonably, promptly. If the individual doesn't speak much English, they may ask for more questions. And so what does the judge do? The judge says you're not allowed to go to places such as bus stops, car washes, day labor pickup sites, ag sites, and the like. You're not allowed to inquire into the type of work one does, and you got to stop targeting people who speak Spanish or bad English. That's what the government's process is. And so what this judge has said is that the sorts of things that the Supreme Court has said the government can do, the government's not allowed to do. And so Kavanaugh at the end concludes that this judge is acting in bad faith. It's a very diplomatically worded response, but you've got to understand that this is Justice Kavanaugh signaling to the judges of the Ninth Circuit who are taking this up on appeal that your district judge has operated in bad faith. And so I'm going to allow this on appeal to the Ninth Circuit. This is Kavanaugh's words now. I believe the court should allow this on appeal to continue going on these ICE raids, because by our standard, based on what the district court has done, we think if it continues to come up our way, we're going to give the government a win. And if the Ninth Circuit sides with the local court, they're going to get reversed. That's basically Kavanaugh telling the Ninth Circuit, you guys need to do your job and rein in your district court judges. That's what's happening at the federal level. Now, it's a very big deal, and this now requires me to shake up some of where I was going to start the show, and so I'll move some stuff around in the show to get to this. Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, has a new book out. She's on book tour. She's been asked about conflicts between the court and the presidency, and are we in a constitutional crisis? So
conflicts between the president and the judiciary are not new. They existed between Andrew Jackson and the Supreme Court. You know, even Abraham Lincoln, you know, there was some conflict. There was conflict between FDR and the Supreme Court. So I think that, you know, when we talk about the separation of powers and the balance of power and there being a tug and a pull between the branches of government, this is, you know, a dance that we've seen before.
She's not wrong. The people on the left are screaming constitutional crisis now because they're not winning. Breaking news happening right now, separate from this case. The Supreme Court has allowed the Trump administration to fire a Democrat on the Federal Trade Commission. This is happening right now. Let me see if I can get this opinion. It has just hit the wires as we come on the show. The president is allowed to fire a member of the Federal Trade Commission. Now, this is kind of a big one, and the reason it's a big one is because there was a lot of question over whether or not the Supreme Court would throw out the old case, Humphrey's executor, and it looks like the court is headed towards throwing out Humphrey's executor, given that they're allowing Trump. Again, remember, what is the rule here? You got to understand what the rule is. The rule is that the Supreme Court will grant the administration's position, even if temporarily, if they think there's a high likelihood that the administration will win on appeal. If they believe there's a high likelihood. So the fact that they're saying you can throw out someone on the throw out someone on the Federal Trade Commission, and the FTC is important because that was the Humphrey's executor decision. So let me back up and explain Humphrey's executor. Humphrey's executor was a case when Franklin Roosevelt tried to throw a man off the Federal Trade Commission, last name Humphreys. Humphreys wound up dying. His executor took over the case to get the back pay. Humphreys, the court ruled, was independent, not making political decisions. And therefore, since it was an independent agency set up by Congress, the decisions of which were not political decisions, Humphreys had to be on the board. They had to allow him. The rule essentially was that Congress could create these quasi-independent agencies, and the individuals could only be fired for cause. You see where this is going with the Federal Reserve and Lisa Cook? FDR just fired the guy because he was a political appointee from the Republicans. He wanted Humphreys gone and argued that the FTC was inside the executive branch. Therefore, he was the executive branch. FDR was, and he could fire him. And the court said Congress has the power to create these independent agencies. If these independent agencies continue to operate independently of the party in the White House and not just carry out the agenda of the president of the day, they're allowed to operate. Essentially, where the Supreme Court is headed now is saying that, with the exception of the Federal Reserve, which they singled out a couple of weeks ago, that the FCC, the FDA, the FTC, the FAA, all of these different entities, at this point, they operate as partisan political operatives designed to obstruct the agenda of the president of the day or to advance the president of the day. So when the president comes in, the Democrats, if the president is a Democrat, the Democrats get the majority, and therefore they advance Democratic agenda. If a Republican comes in, the Republican gets the majority, they advance his agenda. Therefore, these agencies are agencies that actually operate on the whim of the President of the United States. We should stop pretending. The reason they can carve out the Federal Reserve is that the President has limited appointment power within the Federal Reserve. Many of the vestiges of the Federal Reserve are holdovers of the banks of the United States. And so I suspect what we're going to see, if this comes to a fight to the Supreme Court on the Federal Reserve, is the Supreme Court is going to preserve the independence of the Federal Reserve, claiming that based on the original logic of Humphrey's executor, the Federal Reserve is the only remaining entity structured in such a way to keep itself outside of partisan politics. Whether you believe it or not, the court will claim that it's so. Two big cases happening right now as I take the microphone today. So one reason, by the way, can I just pat myself on the back a little bit here in your local radio station? Your podcast is going to be outdated when you get to it. This is live breaking news right now. The United States Supreme Court, out of session on the emergency docket, have made two massive decisions happen just as this show began. Thankfully, I did go to law school, practice con law, among other things, can interpret and digest these decisions pretty quickly for you. On the one, the court is allowing the Immigration Service, ICE, to continue raids in Los Angeles. Justice Kavanaugh all but saying that the district court operated in a partisan manner unbefitting a judge. The second case, the Supreme Court is allowing the president to fire the remaining Democrat on the Federal Trade Commission, which strongly hints that Humphrey's executor is now dead, with the exception of the Federal Reserve. The president will now be emboldened to fire the Democrats from the other outside agencies that are technically independent agencies, and the Supreme Court has just given him the power to do so. When you listen to your next podcast in 3 or 4 days from now, you'll hear this all over again. But thanks to live, local, and national news, you got me here as it happens, telling you what's going on. Can we talk about quality for just a minute? Because I can tell you, as I'm updating some furniture in my house that's lasted a very long time, it pains me to see all the cheapy disposable furniture where you're buying cheap stuff that you replace more often. You're actually losing money. It's like people who go out and they buy very cheap sheets, but at the same time, there are people who think they've got to throw thousands of dollars at bed sheets. I actually know someone who spent $1,500 on sheets. My Bull and Branch sheets, they've lasted longer than that guy's sheets, and they're super soft now. They're not the highest thread count, no, but they're organic cotton, and they're long-lasting, and they get softer over time. Feel the difference an extraordinary night's sleep makes with Bull and Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bullandbranch.com/Eric. That's Bull and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/Eric, ERICK. Save 15%, unlock free shipping, exclusions apply. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I got to tell you, what I find striking is that in the case against Rebecca Slaughter, that is the FTC appointee, John Roberts didn't even send it to the court. He just, as a matter of procedure, stayed the order of the district court so that it could be reviewed further and briefed further by the administration. So it's not a flat-out win by Donald Trump on that particular case. It's essentially, as Ed Whelan notes, an administrative holding action pending further action. They want some briefing, but it does very much look like the days of Humphrey's executor are coming to an end, which isn't really a bad thing. There's this fictionalized idea that there is a fourth branch of government, and there's not. Congress can certainly create some entities, but the Constitution has three branches of government, not a fourth. And so those new entities Congress creates, they have to be put under one of the existing branches. The Federal Reserve comes the closest to being an independent agency because the president doesn't actually get a say on all of the appointees of the Federal Reserve. And they get a lot of their budgeting authority through the fees and stuff. They're somewhat set up independent. And I can totally see the court saying that the Federal Reserve is a unique constitutional entity in the United States. You're not going to like it, I know. And I'm not really a fan of the idea that the Federal Reserve can be somehow uniquely created, but it also, I recognize, is actually good for our economy to have a separate institution that can't be as politicized as the Federal Reserve could otherwise be if the politicians had direct control. At the same time, it's looking like all these other independent 3- and 4-letter agencies, their days are numbered, that the presidents of the United States will be able to control them. And they might as well. I mean, they actually do already control them. Look at Lena Khan at the FTC when she was there, et cetera. Now, I got to tell you about Americans for Prosperity because they are the largest leading grassroots group in the country. They happen to be on our side. They would love to have you on their side. They'd love to have you on board. But right now, instead of just telling you about, political opportunities to get involved and agendas to push, they actually want Americans to commit to taking a step for freedom in time for our 250th anniversary. You can go to AFPvolunteer.com today and sign up. You go to AFPvolunteer.com and you can find out about the 250,000 Steps for Freedom Challenge. It's not you taking 250,000 steps for freedom. It's you taking one step and me taking one step and 249,998 other people taking one step. And we get to 250,000 steps for freedom in time for the 250th anniversary of the country to move the country towards freedom, towards the vision of the founders. Go to AFPvolunteer.com today. AFPvolunteer.com. Sign up with Americans for Prosperity today. Commit to advancing freedom in your neighborhood. In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you can only pick two. What if you could have all three at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they've upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How's it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and for all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/Erickson, Erickson. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. Thank you for tuning in. The phone number, 877-973-7425. I got to talk about this horrible story in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it isn't really a story I want to talk about, but I kind of have to talk about it. And if you read my morning piece, if you text data to 33777, you can sign up for my show notes. You get a discount, and let me tell you a tariff story. Don't tune out though, because there's a method to the madness here. And it's not just tariffs, but it's mostly tariffs. So there's a coffee place. I have become a coffee snob, and I've dragged my wife along with me to becoming coffee snobs. I hate Starbucks. I don't like Starbucks coffee. And I know they've got the new machines, and you can get the light brand. You can get the lighter roast bean stuff. I still don't like Starbucks. There's a coffee shop in Smyrna, Georgia called Rev Coffee, and my wife and I get 5-pound bags of coffee. It's a light roast, single source bean from Guatemala. If that makes no sense to you, don't worry about it. All I will say is that the cost of a 5-pound bag has gone up from $100 to $160. The tariff has a lot to do with it because of the tariff rate on Guatemala. It's not the only reason. That's the biggest reason. And Democrats, of course, are starting to point out that the price of bananas is up, the price of coffee is up, and it doesn't help Republicans to respond the way Democrats have responded in the past. Say, well, you should just make a change. Good for you, rich boy. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me, blah, 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 blah. That's you can say that to me, that's fine. I have thick skin. But when you start complaining to people who have kids and they're complaining about the price of bananas, it doesn't go over well. But here's the thing. Interest rates are going to get cut probably twice. The economy is going to roar back to life, and people are not going to care about the tariffs as much. And if the Supreme Court strikes them down, well, people really aren't going to care about the tariffs. Do you know what they're still going to care about? Crime. Irina Zarutska was a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee. She fled the war in Ukraine to Charlotte, North Carolina, where she was murdered. She's on a light rail train. And to Carlos Brown, sitting behind her, she got on the train. He was already there. She got on. She sat in front of him. And he stood up, pulled out a pocket knife, and began stabbing her to death. She bled out on the train. He's been charged with murder. He was arrested back in January. He was charged with misusing 911. He had 14 prior court cases in Mecklenburg County. He had 12 convictions. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison for after convictions for robbery with a dangerous weapon, breaking and entering, and larceny in 2015. The convictions were for 2 separate instances in 2013 and 2014. Career recidivist criminal. He should have been in prison for the rest of his life. At some point, progressives convinced people to get rid of 3 strikes laws. Do you know that in Washington, D.C., almost all crime comes from 400 to 600 individuals? Almost all crime in Washington, D.C., particularly the carjackings, come from between 400 and 600 of the same people who are in a revolving door of justice, who never get put in jail, who take advantage of cashless bail, who get in prison and get out very quickly because of short sentences. Alex Soros, not George, not his dad. His dad is super old. It's Alex Soros, who is funding progressive DAs and progressive judges around the country. The Soros money has caused a number of progressives to get elected in criminal justice positions. And they are causing this crime wave in this country, allowing people out of jail, denying people jail who should be in jail. If interest rates get cut twice this year, which I think they're going to get cut twice now, given the economic news, the economy is going to start roaring. One interest rate cut coming in 2 weeks is going to rev up the economy. Another one in December is really going to speed it up. We're going to get into next year, and the economy is probably going to be doing really well, with or without tariffs, going to be doing real well. And people are going to feel it. And the Democrats will be making an economic message that is neutralized by the state of the American economy that is actually felt by everyone. I got a real hard time right now with some Republicans on the tariff issues. Like, people are feeling it. Scott Bessent, God bless him. I like the guy, and he's in a terrible position defending a policy that he has written about in the past that he doesn't support. Scott Bessent in the private sector was not a tariff guy. Interesting enough, he was a Soros guy. And he was opposed to tariffs, and now he's defending them, and he's doing his best to deflect. He's doing a very good job of it, but it kind of drives me crazy because I know he doesn't really believe it. New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, they've been covering Caterpillar and John Deere and GM and Ford and major American industrial companies that are starting to have problems because of tariffs. The manufacturing businesses in America for which tariffs were supposed to help have lost 76,000 jobs in the last 3 months. They're going to come roaring back to life with interest rate cuts, with or without the tariffs. And the GOP will still have a crime issue, and the Democrats won't have the crime issue or won't have the economic issue. This young woman was murdered on a train, and you know what the Democrats and the media did? They ignored it. You didn't hear about it on ABC. You didn't hear about it on CBS. You didn't hear about it on NBC. You didn't hear about it on CNN. You didn't hear about it on MSNBC. And part of the reason was because she was white and he was black, and we should be real honest about that. If the role was reversed, you know and I know that absolutely this would be a national story, and there would be lots of conversations about race in America if a white person stabbed to death a black person on public transportation. But we live in a world where Daniel Penny can get arrested, go to jail, and be tried for murder when he kept people safe on a subway train in New York City. And we live in a world where Irina Zarutska can be murdered by a homeless man in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, North Carolina, and the mayor of Charlotte have a press conference where she thanks the media for not highlighting the gruesome video and saying we should not stigmatize homeless people based on the actions of one bad person. And the National Press Corps can avoid covering the story until Republicans start talking about it, and then their take is Republicans pounce. Republicans, you should keep talking about this story. It's a gruesome, awful story. Progressives convinced Americans to get rid of 3 strikes laws around the country. We need to bring back the 3 strikes laws. By the way, they're still complaining about the drug vessel strike. In Venezuela. I'm going to do an event with Scott Jennings tonight here in Macon, Georgia, where I am. Going to introduce him to stage. He's speaking at a conference down here. This is Scott on CNN on this issue.
I'll give you my political view of how I think most Americans are going to view it, most Republicans certainly, and that is that societal decline is a choice. And when you let people come into the country by the millions, when you let drugs flow over the border and you just say, well, let's just get them here and then see how the bureaucracy sorts it out, most people want a more aggressive response. Societal decline is a choice, and they see this illegal immigration problem and this drug flow problem as part of overall societal decline, and they are hoping and looking for and happy with Trump and Vance taking a muscular response to this.
Yes, they are. Americans actually are happy about the president taking a muscular response. And Rand Paul can go wring his hands on due process, and the Democrats can complain about how do we know they were drug lords? I'm sorry, folks, but I don't really care about the Venezuelan drug lords, and I tend to trust the administration isn't just killing farmers riding around in boats in the Caribbean. And the Democrats have no answer. In fact, there's a funny thing that's happened on social media today. A progressive, and he is a progressive Democrat, said Democrats need an answer for crime. And a response from another prominent progressive was, Democrats are ready to go full Hitler. That's right. Apparently, any reasonable Democrat who thinks the Democrats need to be tough on crime is going full Hitler. That's where the progressive mindset is. The mindset that elects these judges who are bad on crime, the mindset that elects prosecutors who are bad on crime, the mindset that thinks crime is just something that happens. And I'm sorry, but one of the things that Democratic politicians and members of the press are saying is it's a statistical anomaly. It's such a rare thing to happen. Can you imagine the Democratic politicians standing around Irina Zaritska as she bleeds out, telling her, we're very sorry, but we want you to know this is a very rare thing to happen. A lot of good it does her or her family. A lot of good it does her or her family. The story needs to be covered. And again, I would note, and I maintain, and I will double and triple and quadruple down on it, if she were black and the murderer were white, this would be a national news story. But because it's a mentally ill, allegedly homeless black man who murdered her, caught on tape, it's just another day in America. And for the Democrats to tell us it's a statistical anomaly as people do not feel safe in cities, as Democrats try to push you and me to use public transportation and give up our cars, they like, crime's just something that happens. It just happens. You can't get rid of crime. You got to listen to this. This is that Eli Mistel idiot. Listen to this.
People have looked and studied and figured out what creates crime, what stops crime, how crime happens. And the evidence shows one thing that I think most people, even in our own community, do not fully appreciate. The police are not there to prevent crime. Police do not prevent crime. At best, they catch criminals after the fact. And that's great. That's necessary. Yay, right? But if what you're actually saying is that you're worried about crime prevention, putting more police on the streets does nothing to help crime prevention.
That's their talking point now. More police doesn't mean crime prevention. Really? Why is crime down in Washington, D.C. right now? That's his talking point. Why is crime down in Washington, D.C.? They put more police and National Guard on the street. This is a three-card Monty by this moron. Doesn't want to acknowledge that a greater police presence does reduce crime. After the fact, they arrest the criminals. Well, if criminals think they're going to get arrested and go to jail, they're less likely to commit crime. The left doesn't want to acknowledge this. They want to dance around with circular arguments and ignore the logic of the situation. The more police you have in a city, the more the presence of police is seen, the less crime you have. Why do you think they park police out in front of certain locations? It reduces crime. Why do you think they put armed guards in banks? It reduces crime. There's a jewelry store near me. A police officer stays there, parked in his car. They don't have crime, and it's not in a safe neighborhood. They don't have crime because the police presence is there. Police presence does actually help reduce crime because it discourages criminals. And now you've got the left actually arguing that more police don't actually stop crime. Tell you what. Can't know for sure because she's dead, but I bet you Irina Zaritska would have appreciated some police on that train in Charlotte, North Carolina. I bet you she would have appreciated a stronger police presence. I bet you she'd still be alive if there was a stronger police presence. We need to go back to 3 strikes laws. We need to start putting these bad guys back in prison and leaving them there. At some point, Some people just need to be locked up with the key thrown away. At the end of the day, we as a society have become confused. Prison is for punishment. It's not for rehabilitation. We should punish them. And those who continue to break the law when they get out of prison, put them back in prison, and the punishment is you never get out again. And that will make the rest of us safer. Most crimes are committed by the same group of people in every city. Groups of people are repeat offenders. And this man, DeCarlos Brown, 12 prior convictions, 14 prior court cases. Now he's murdered someone who escaped the Russian bombs to be murdered on a Charlotte, North Carolina train by a murderous homeless man. May God rest her soul, take care of her family, and comfort her. And may the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, finally get a clue about what to do. Housekeeping note for you. You're gonna, if you're on the activist list, you're gonna get an email from me. I have decided I gotta give up my activist role. You know, I love to drive you guys to call Congress or your state legislature, particularly people in Georgia. I've done it in the past, but we've got the cost of the activism portal that I used is up over $30,000 a year now. And I don't use it enough to justify that cost. So I'm sending everybody who is an activist subscriber an email, just pushing them to use my show notes email to subscribe to show notes, because I can still send emails from there. They can't be as targeted. I can't target people by state or zip code and stuff like that. But I cannot afford just to keep spending $30,000+ a year on an activism portal. As much as I love being able to, I think I'm the only radio show host in the country that does it. And I love that activism stands out, but it's really expensive. It's actually gone up by about $10,000 in just the last year in the cost. And I don't want to, I got other stuff. I got employees. I got to cover salaries. We've got a lot more travel now to affiliates around the country, and I just can't justify it. So when you get an email, here's what's going to happen. You're going to flood the you're going to flood the show and say, is this spam? Is this spam? I think this is spam. No, it's not spam. It actually is from me with a link to my daily Substack email that you can subscribe to if you're not a subscriber. So that's it. And if you want to find out all the links, you can text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, and you can get the podcast, the show notes, the live stream, and so much more. Trying to keep you guys engaged, and I actually want to keep you engaged in the fight at the state, local, and federal level, but I can't afford to fund this portal anymore, so we'll find new creative ways to do it. Now, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm, because you can get 3 of them. You can save $200. Get them for less than $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. What you do is you go to the website, EdenPureDeals.com. You put in the discount code ERIC3, ERICK3, and you get 3 of them. Now, they're an air purifier, so they get rid of pollen, they get rid of dust. They get rid of the stuff floating in the air. They kill 99.9% of bacteria and viruses with a generation of plasma. But where they really shine, I actually don't use it as an air purifier. I use it as an odor eliminator. It generates ozone, and ozone wipes out odors. Odors are ionized particles, and ozone is 3 atoms of oxygen in a molecule, which is unstable. And so when the ionized particle of the odor touches the ozone particle, it releases one of the atoms of oxygen, and it wipes out the odor particle. It's science, and it works. It is EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3, and you will be killing all odors. They're small, too, by the way. You can hold this thing in the palm of your hands, plug it into the wall, use a USB cord, and they just work. I keep one in my travel bag. So you get upstairs, downstairs, your basement, your travel bag. Get 3 of them, less than $200. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC, ERICK, the number 3, no space, ERIC3 at EdenPureDeals.com. Go check them out today.